Hello and welcome to another Game Nexus arcade video. Today we're going to be taking another look at Planet Harriers, released in 2000 and 2001 on the Sega Hikaru arcade hardware. Of course, this is running on my original Sega Hikaru arcade board, which I actually had purchased just over 4 years ago now, since it was in January of 2016. And as you can see, in the year 2020 now, this board is still going strong. But if you didn't see my original video or you're unfamiliar with Planet Harriers, it's kind of like the sequel / spiritual successor of Space Harrier. And basically, to me, it kind of feels like a cross between, I would say, Space Harrier and Panzer Dragoon. If you're wondering why I didn't go right into the gameplay right away, when I was first actually filming this, I had noticed that the audio wasn't playing in stereo, and it turns out the 3.5 millimeter plug wasn't plugged all the way into the upscaler. Now, if you're wondering what I'm doing here, this is actually a code where you can play as Opa Opa, who is the playable character in the game Fantasy Zone. And if you want to know how to actually do that code, you basically have to highlight a specific characters in a specific order. So the way that it goes is you highlight X, Nick, Cory, Glenn, Cory, Nick, Cory, Glenn, X, Cory, then Glenn again. Or if you want to know the way that I figured it out, I just figured out when you move the Planet Harriers joystick, you just have to move it in the direction that the character is, regardless of what character you're on. So the actual code is right, down, left, up, left, down, left, up, right, left, up. And then if you did it right, when it goes up, finally goes up to Glenn on the top, it will turn into Opa Opa. And at this part, I was actually checking to see if Opa Opa could actually run, and like little legs sprout out of it. And if you didn't know, in this game, when you actually lose and it says continue, a little Opa Opa actually comes out, and it's your like continue thing. And now the way that this game works, if you didn't see my previous video that I released in 2016, there are basically two different firing methods. You have your lock-on, which is done by the button on the top of the joystick, and then you have your regular shot, which is the trigger inside the joystick. And the regular shot, you just shoot the enemies. The lock-on shot, you can... What can I do for you? The lock-on shot, you can actually lock on to enemies and shoot multiple enemies at a time. And then the regular shot, of course, just shoots the enemies. Then the third way of attacking is there actually is a bomb button on the control panel, which will launch a bomb, which you only have a limited number of. If you look at the bottom left corner of the screen right now, you'll notice right now, as far as the bombs go, I have 3. And now you don't want to use those like when you're just attacking regular enemies, as long as there's not too many enemies on the screen at once. And now, just to give you the quick breakdown, the game was location tested in Japan on September 18th of 2000. The official Japan nationwide release was December 12th of 2000. Then the game came out in North American and European territories on January 18th of 2001. And of course, unfortunately, it still holds true to this day. This game has not been released on any game consoles or PC or anything. The only official release of Planet Harriers is on the Sega Hikaru, so the only real way to play this is either on an official Hikaru board, like what I have, or on an emulator, which, according to an episode of Video Game Esoterica that I saw not too long ago, I think he had released it in May of this year. Apparently, this game still doesn't fully work in emulators, because after like a certain stage, it like freezes or crashes or something. Which is something I personally don't know, because I remember when I had first heard of Planet Harriers, I think I might have ran it on one of the emulators, and I might have like got through a little bit of the first stage, but it was kind of one of those games where I was like, I really want to get this game, and then eventually I found my Hikaru board, control panel, and power supply set, and of course I've been playing that way ever since, with no real need to see how well the game that I own the real arcade board of is working in an emulator. Because the unfortunate part is, most people will see a game that runs on an emulator and just assume that it will run on everything. And now the Hikaru board, if I hadn't discussed this in my original video, was actually quite a strong board. And now, since that was just the first boss, that was a really easy boss. But the Hikaru board was based off of two Hitachi SH4 128-bit RASC 200 MHz processors.
Hello. How are you?
Along with two Hitachi two ARM7 Yamaha processors for 5.1 surround sound in some games.
Have a nice day.
Stage 2, Wario.
But it goes without saying that this is a really good game, and I probably said it back on my original video when I first did a video on this game, but the one thing that I really want to do myself is find another Hikaru board and another Planet Harriers ROM board and link them up together, because if you watch the demo mode for a while, it shows like all the cool stuff you could do when in linked mode. Now, as I was saying about the specifications, those two Yamaha AICA processors run at 45 megahertz, and that offers 64-channel AD-PCM sound. The system has a main memory of 64 megabytes with another 28 megabytes of just graphics memory and 8 megabytes of just sound memory. Now, when you're hearing like all these megabytes, you think to yourself, oh, well, that doesn't sound like all that much, because today we have like gigabytes of memory in all our computers and everything, but... And now if you see here, it's got like a Player 2 Opa Opa that flies in that has a purple back instead of a red back. I just thought that was kind of cool. But as I was saying, you think to yourself, oh, well, this is only megabytes of memory, so it's not that impressive. But in the year 2000 and 1999, when Brave Firefighters came out, which was the first game on the board, it was actually a rather impressive setup. It wasn't anything to really downplay. But of course, in its complexity and power came great expense. The system costed so much to make, and of course the big problem, especially when it comes to getting another Planet Harriers board, Hikaru boards are so delicate that if they are not shipped just right, they will absolutely break in shipping, which going back to the guy on Video Game Esoterica, he apparently received a Hikaru board that was broken in shipping. And now, I'm not saying that's what happened in the situation, but I wouldn't be surprised if people sold broken Hikaru boards as working and then just blamed the courier for breaking them and still got their full money and had the buyer collect the money from the shipper. So if USPS did it, they'd just be getting the money from there. But who knows? You just gotta make sure it works and make sure it's shipped properly. But now more about the Hikaru board itself. It really could do a lot of like impressive things that not even the Dreamcast could do, because what you gotta realize is Hikaru is actually basically a Naomi spec, but it has some extra stuff. Like, it uses the Sega custom 3D engine, and it doesn't have like the same 3D hardware as what the Naomi had. So it could do something called fog shading. It could do all kinds of fog and shadows and motion blur and everything. It had 2 bitmap layers, dual monitor support for some games, 4-channel audio. I thought that other thing that said 5.1, I couldn't see this being 5.1, but with the 4 audio ports, some games could do 4-channel audio, similar to what Spike Out Digital Battle Online did. If you had that crazy big speaker system, if you remember that video, there was a arcade cabinet that had a really big speaker system, and that allowed it to do all kinds of audio. Now, something that I was looking at, System 16 here, that was saying the board was fully custom and very expensive to produce. It was only really designed for one game, Brave Firefighters, as it could do the complex fire and water effects. There were eventually only 6 games for the system before it was dropped in favor of the much cheaper Naomi 2. It was the first board able to do this fog shading technology, which one of these days I do still have the ROM board for Brave Firefighters that I can snap on this. When I find a good enough light gun solution, I will be doing a video on that. And of course, when I find a good enough control solution for Star Wars Racer Arcade, which, mind you, is not the same game that came out on your game consoles, it's a bit of a different game, I will do a video on that one as well. So eventually we'll have a bit more Hikaru love on this channel. But until then, the only game I can really play, since I have the dedicated control panel, as you may or may not have seen on my older videos, is Planet Harriers. Now, I'm not sure if I read this in my original video, but here is what they say about the reception of this game from Wikipedia. In September of 2000, IGN described Planet Harriers running on the Sega Hikaru arcade heart system as the unrivaled champion of video game graphics, and stated there's never been as visually impressive as a video game as this, praising the long draw distance, clean and crisp image quality, speed of movement, large number of fast-moving objects, and amazing graphical style. They also praised the gameplay as the fastest, most intense 3D shooter ever crafted. In Japan, Game Machine listed Planet Harrier on their February 1st, 2001 issue as being the 11th most successful dedicated arcade system game of the year. A rumored Nintendo GameCube port was planned, but the port never materialized. And I also heard rumblings of a possible Dreamcast port, but of course that never happened as well. So pretty much this game received the Spike Out treatment, and they were going to port it to Dreamcast, then they didn't. They were going to port it to GameCube, then they didn't. And it's just kind of sad when you think about it. Like at this point, in a couple of months, like it's September 2020 at the time of recording this video, but in a couple of months, we will be 20 years after the official Japanese release of this game on December 12th of this year, and there still is no way that consumers can play Planet Harriers other than resorting to emulation or going out and getting the arcade board like I did. Which, of course, for most people who don't like do arcade things, is not really an easy way to do. And as I said, according to what I've heard, the game doesn't run perfectly in every stage. But then again, who knows? Maybe it's one of those your mileage may vary, or maybe there's an emulator that can do it that needs a special tweak. I don't know about that stuff as I said, because I've actually had this question posed on so many of my arcade videos. Like, somebody's like, where do I get the ROM and how do I run it on an emulator? And I'm like, why would I know that? I have the real arcade board in my house, and if I want to play this game, I just hook it up, so I'm not going to go out of my way and figure out how an emulator can run this game. But yeah, the stages, especially the final stage, I can definitely give them, it's one of the fastest games that was ever available, and especially all the stuff that's on the screen at once. Kind of reminds me of one of those crazy Japanese shooters, but in 3D. And in the last stage, there are some things that are so quick, it's like, wow. I do think if they had somehow released this on the Dreamcast, they would have had to seriously scale it down, unfortunately. So maybe that's why Sega didn't release a Dreamcast version of Planet Harriers.
Watch out!
Welcome. Which one do you like?
And if you notice, when you get into the Star Shop, it just switches between the girl and that like weird guy who goes, "What can I do for you today?" So it just kind of swaps between the two. And the funny part is, it might be just my bad memory, but I don't remember this 7-way shot being an option, or maybe it's just one of those things that I just never bought on any of my previous gameplays. But yeah, that's one of those things that I'll have to do, that if there's a certain power-up that maybe I haven't tried, when I do more gameplays of this game, I will definitely have to try some of the extra power-ups, because the extra shooting modes that you get in this game are definitely worth it, because they definitely help. Shooting one bullet at a time versus 7, there's like no comparison. But like the one cool part about this game is, just like most Naomi games, is it runs in what's considered arcade high resolution, which is what we would consider 640 by 480 or 480p these days. So it runs in full frame resolution, and it runs in, like, if you plug this into any PC monitor, you don't need any special upscaler in order to run this game. Of course, when I do the capture, I actually have to run it through the VGA to HDMI upscaler, because the Elgato Game Capture HD that I use is not compatible with VGA, plus it won't accept any signal that's below 720p. Well, technically it won't accept any signal that's below 720p, but will accept composite, which is crazy. Now this was one of those bosses that when I played this, I was like, wow, this boss is actually making me die a lot, because there's a lot of things that you actually have to kill in order to kill this, because you see that little enemies thing? That's counting down all the little things floating around that you have to kill before this boss is killed. And as I said with like Spike Out Digital Battle Online, this would be one of those games that probably would be really fun if you ever found like a dual cabinet like you saw in the beginning of the video there. that was set up, and you could actually play some co-op play on Planet Harriers. But yeah, this is one of those games that, now that I've played it again, I will definitely have to play it a bit more often. Maybe like once a year I'll do a Planet Harriers gameplay. But this is an excellent game, and this is kind of one of those ones where, even though this was made by Sega's Amusement Vision branch, this was still like just Sega arcade perfection, plain and simple.
What can I do for you?
And yeah, that was the guy I was telling you about, the what can I do for you guy. And basically, some stages have that like in the middle of the stage star shop, whereas most stages will just have the after the stage shop. But I know stage 1 has it, and some of the other stages will have the star shop as well. But what I really like about this game is that no two stages are exactly identical. So it's not like one of those shooter games where you're in like stage 2 or stage 3 and you're just like, oh wow, this game is just like the same on every single stage. And, you know, after a while it just becomes a chore to play. Every stage of Planet Harriers is kind of its own thing. And that's what makes this game so fun, that they're all just so different. Now, I definitely have to say, this whole code to actually play as Opa Opa, it's kind of cool if you like Fantasy Zone, so it kind of makes it feel like it's like the new Fantasy Zone. But I definitely have to say the characters themselves, which are Glenn, Cory, X, and Nick. See, I knew I'd forget one of those character names because they're not the most exciting, unfortunately. But they're a lot more like colorful, and I like what like they say at the end of the stage and everything. It's really cool. But this is a cool little code. I figure the reason why Sega actually made this as a thing is that the character model is in the game anyway, because it's the character that actually saves you after you die, asking you if you want to continue. And then if you put another coin, 2 or 4, in the machine, then you can continue where you left off, which is nice. So basically you have 5 selectable characters in this game. And if you see me rolling back and forth like that sometimes, that's actually a really good dodging move that is done by moving the joystick really quickly twice in one direction, and then your character will just roll really quick. And that really can get you out of some sticky situations if you're being destroyed by all the enemies. And this is one of those games I always thought to myself, if Sega wanted to be like really nice to gamers, they could like make Planet Harriers HD, where it would be basically what you see here, but widescreen resolution, 1080p. They wouldn't even have to remake the graphics. They could just keep it like this. Because I know there'll be some people that'll say, oh, well, that game's from 2000. That's like Dreamcast graphics. It's terrible. But I'm kind of one of those people where I think to myself, this game is actually very cartoony, and that's just kind of how it's meant to be. So if you try to make the graphics look too realistic, or try to make everything with like Ultra HD textures and everything, I think it would just like ruin the aesthetic of the game. So I think the game, if they ever remade this, it would have to stay like this, but I wouldn't put too much stock in Sega like releasing another Planet Harriers or Space Harrier or any game in the series, unfortunately, because it seems like lately they really haven't been doing much with a lot of their franchises. Now, one thing I wanted to touch on was I did find the IGN article that talked about the GameCube version of Planet Harriers. It's not too long, so just for fun, I can actually read this for you. This was an article that was released on May 2001, May 14th. And it said, today's sources close to Sega indicate that to IGN that Planet Harriers is one of the big GameCube projects on the way from its popular arcade development group Amusement Vision. It is expected that Planet Harriers will at least be announced or shown on video at E3, and of course that would have been E3 2001, though the source offered no details in this regard. For those of you not familiar with Space Harriers / Planet Harriers franchise, it can be best understood as intense arcade shooter. Planet Harriers currently runs in full 3D on the Hikaru arcade board and boasts a very fast frame rate, which this game runs at 60 frames per second. You can select from one of 4 characters, each having their own different weapon. The characters are decidedly bizarre, featuring a nurse who uses a hypodermic needle as a weapon, a rock guitarist, policeman, and a Major League Baseball pitcher. All the characters fly forward through each stage at neck-break pacing, taking out as many objects and enemies as possible, all while avoiding a ton of obstacles. More importantly, the game features cooperative play without the use of split screen. Sounds like a fine addition to GameCube already. Visually, Planet Harriers is one of the best looking arcade games on the market. Of course, it's nothing GameCube can't handle, or even improve upon. Be sure to check out the attached media for the arcade version for a better look at the game. And unfortunately, that was the only article that was ever written about the so-called GameCube version of Planet Harriers. And it was pretty much one of those rumors, which, as they said here, today's sources close to Sega indicated. So, there's no, true way of knowing, was there a GameCube version of Planet Harriers in development? Or was it just one of those things that Sega was just kind of talking around the round table, being like, hey, we got this game Planet Harriers, let's release it on a modern game console, GameCube of course being the one they would have chosen at the time, and let's do it. And then maybe they were finally getting down to actually doing the project, and it just somehow didn't work out. But this boss was one of those I thought it was going to run out of time, because it most certainly has. You have to keep on getting all the different life bars down, and if you don't get the little one, the big one down, the little ones can actually be restored. And at this part right here that you'll see in about a minute here, I was actually happy to find out that when I died and I continued, actually the time started all over again, because I've actually played some arcade games where if there's a time limit and you continue, you don't actually get time back, and your 180 seconds that you're given to defeat this boss is all the time you'll ever have. Now, one of the things I wanted to make mention of is, on my control panel, it says one game is 2 coins. I think it says 2x 25 cents. But I saw one Planet Harriers control panel online on eBay for sale, and it said one game was 4 coins, or 4 credits, which means a whole $1 to play this game. Now, I don't know if that $1 would be $1 for each credit, or
Hello, how are you?
or maybe $1 per to start and then 50 cents to continue. But if you ever looked in the test mode of any of these games, you would see that the arcade operator can actually adjust to that in most Sega games, and they can do,
Final stage. Relax.
to get 1 credit it's always the same, or they can make it so that you get that discount if you continue. Now this is the level 5, which is a lot faster than any of the other levels. At least it just has that more sense of speed than any of the other levels had. I remember when I first started playing this, I didn't realize like those bars that were coming at me were actually the enemies. That's why I ended up taking so many hits right there. And that's one thing I definitely have to say about Planet Harriers, is the breakneck speed, all the sound effects, and then you get this like really cool sounding music in the background, and it just basically makes it such a great experience for anybody to play. And as you can hear that sound there, that was me locking onto all the characters. And this is that part where it really gets really fast. And this is the part that I think if any game console were to show this, it would be the part where, like, at least the Dreamcast or the GameCube at the time probably would have a little bit of trouble keeping up. Now, what I was looking at right now is that online they had the game brochure, and all the game brochure is the flyer that you saw in the beginning of the game.
Let's enter the star shop. Hi, what can I do for you?
And now what the actual flyer says right here is, "You're the last hope. The planet is teetering on the brink of disaster. The forces of evil are at work trying to overthrow this kind and gentle people. Only the hyperspace soldiers from Earth can keep the planet from falling under a future of domination and persecution. Failure cannot be an option." Now that really gets you hyped, in order to know that, like, you're the only hope in order to avert catastrophe, basically. And now the features that it lists on that brochure or flyer, as I like to call it. Multi-lock-on system allows you to destroy multiple targets simultaneously. Flash your targets and they turn into gold. Use the gold to purchase end-of-stage power-ups, and as I said, sometimes mid-stage power-ups. End-of-stage power-ups, choose from weapon upgrades or health enhancements. Choose from 1 of 4 characters, each with their own unique weapons and capabilities. 5 incredibly interstellar levels. Anytime buy-in, a second player can join the action at any time. Of course, that's assuming that, just like on the flyer, you have a dual cabinet setup wherever you're playing this. Unlimited continues. Players can keep coming back to see where in the universe they'd end up next. As you can see from this gameplay, since I'm actually having it in free play on my board, I would never just stop playing. Incredibly powerful Hikaru arcade hardware. You've never seen 3D graphics this intense or this fast. Which, of course, at the time, that would be pretty much true. And then I was just looking at, this was a Wayback Machine of Sega's official page of Planet Harriers, which was actually under Home and Archived Games. Because I guess at the time, this was like not a game they were really supporting anymore. But yeah, they have like the game brochure, operation manual, and wiring diagrams, which the good thing is, just like any of my other JVS games, this game isn't hard to wire up. You just have to plug in the the USB-looking cable for the JVS I/O board. Video is VGA, audio is red and white audio, and then just your 6 and 8 pin power connectors from your JVS arcade power supply. And that's really all there is to hooking up Planet Harriers. Of course, when it comes to controls, you will need an analog control for this game to work right. That's how it's actually designed to run. I'd imagine maybe you could do something to get it to work on digital, but it just wouldn't feel right if you ask me. And now the only complaint I have about any games that use one of these big half analog sticks, if you're really tired, or you've been doing like a lot of yard work or something, the only thing to keep in mind is that if your arms are tired and you're using the analog stick and you're playing this whole game, which can easily take like 30 to 50 or more minutes depending on how quickly you get through the game, by the time you get to level 5, your arm could really be hurting, because as you can see from my gameplay, this isn't one of those games where you can stand still in the middle of the screen and somehow defeat all the enemies. And I probably admitted this last time, but I will admit I am not a perfect player of this game, but I really do enjoy it. And of course, as I've said in just about all my arcade videos, that's the best part about owning an arcade board, is you don't have to keep pumping quarters into the machine, because you actually can set it free play, or if you're one of the people who really likes that tactile feedback, you can set up a credit button and insert coins every time. Although the funny part is I've known people who have actually owned arcade cabinets and they like to actually insert coins. But yeah, now as we're getting into the last section of the game, this becomes the harder part, getting closer to the final boss. But as I was saying, Planet Harriers is just simply pure Sega arcade bliss. This game is so great. If you could find it as in an arcade, and I was trying to shoot all those health packs there, and I didn't realize my health was full, so there'd be no point. Now basically this final boss, Deadlies, has multiple shapes that it can take. So if you look at the life meter, you'll see what shape the boss is currently in, and it keeps on changing, and it has different attack modes. And have you ever seen those big weights go over the enemies in the game? That means I used a bomb. But yeah, as I was saying, Planet Harriers is an excellent arcade game. I really highly recommend if you can find it in an arcade, or if either you can play it on an emulator and maybe get it playing better than usual, or if you have an arcade by you that happens to have a Planet Harriers arcade machine. That of course would be the best, because there are a lot of Sega arcade games that really are played best with their original controls in the arcade. And of course, as you can see, I died a couple times to this boss, but I didn't think it was as hard as that like crazy starfish boss of the previous stage. Because as you can see, I didn't die all that much, luckily.
Game cleared.
And then that was the final boss of Planet Harriers. And of course, little Opa Opa here from Fantasy Zone was our playable character, as I'd said. The thing that I always thought was kind of weird is after your second Star Shop, like your last Star Shop, why would the game even give you like gold anymore? Because you couldn't spend it. As you could see, I had a lot of gold at the end there, but there was no way to actually use it for anything. But yeah, as I've said numerous times in this video, Planet Harriers is just an excellent Sega arcade game. Even though it's nearing 20 years old at this point, I would still highly recommend Planet Harriers to anybody who likes shooters, or just likes Sega games for that matter. Play it on your emulator, play it on your at your arcade, or just go all the way in and find a Sega Hikaru arcade board like I did. As you can see there's Spike and Spike Jr. from Spike Out, which I believe was also done by Amusement Vision as well. But yeah, excellent game, highly recommended. Well, this has been another Game Nexus arcade video, and I shall see you later. Bye.
Game over. Thank you for playing.